Claudia Mitchell, thank you very much for agreeing to spend a little bit of time with us. I wanted to ask you about your approach to visual research, which is very participatory research. And maybe actually you could start just by spending a little bit of time telling me what a participatory approach to visual research means.
Good question. Participatory work broadly for me relates to, first of all, engaging the community, the participants at some level, and even defining what's going to be done and what kinds of questions might be looked at. And that, of course, can be at a great level or it can be a minimal level, but there's some engagement. Then the second component for me is actual engagement of the participants in meaning making, whether it is performance, whether it's drawing, whether it's engaging with photography, but they're actually producing, they're doing something, like that kind of engagement. And then at the level of interpretation, that you go back, it could be you go back to do the interpretation, or you're doing the interpretation right on the spot. But it's not the idea that the researcher is all powerful in this. And of course, power is a very important part of this. Where is the power? And I actually think of the word the phrase democratizing of research being a key aspect of participatory work.
Very good.
Okay.
And so then what's visual participatory work?
Well, the visual tools make participatory work democratic, as far as I'm concerned. Once you put a camera in the hands of someone, you're no longer sort of directing the conversation. You're no longer doing question-answer as we're doing here. You could give me a camera and say, Claudia, photograph. What do you think participatory research looks like? So it's turning the power back to the person, the participants in the study. If it's using participatory video, it's the idea that they're coming up with what it is that they want to do. You can provide tools, you can provide equipment, but the idea of trying to see this through the eyes of the participants, and even something like working with family photographs or archival photographs. They open up a space. The participants are the experts, not you. And the opportunity to be able to show that, to work with it, to interpret that work. And the participants are the experts at that point.
So if I wanted to develop my own research study using participatory visual methods, I'd really have to work on my own attitude to the research and my
Absolutely.
I would need to be quite humble and quite open-minded.
You would have to be humble, you'd have to be very open-minded, and you'd have to really think about, in your own area, whether it's school dropouts or whether it's something around healthcare. Well, what are the power dimensions there already? And if those are the power dimensions that are there already, what would you as a researcher need to negotiate? And how would you do that in relation to the visual?
Are there any areas where you feel that a participatory approach would not make sense for me as a researcher?
That's a good question. No, probably not. I mean, which doesn't suggest that I think everything must be participatory. But I think that because sometimes maybe a really appropriate approach is to do historical research or to work with documents in a very systematic way. But then you might also work with those same documents with participants, whether they are the users of those documents, the people who wrote those documents. So even there, I sort of think, well, you actually could turn it back into something much more participatory, and it could also be very visual. And if we think of documents as being visual, what do they look like? What would you photograph in them, and so on. So I have a hard time thinking of any particular study that couldn't be. But obviously you have to be prepared to do the background work on what would that require. Would it be drawing? Would it be photographs? Would it be video? Would it be performance? How are you going to then make sense of that? Are you going to photograph or videotape the performance? So it takes on another level. But I think that there would be lots of possibilities.
Very good. And so thinking ahead then, I need to start planning my research and thinking of the endpoint and how I'm going to present my research. Is that a different thing? If I'm using visual data, should I be thinking about moving beyond the standard research paper or book or thesis?
Yeah, I think people are using a lot of work around the use of video to re-represent the work. So actually taking what you've done in a study, providing you've documented it visually all the way along, and actually construct that into some sort of a composite piece. Could be a visual essay, but also thinking about exhibitions and installations, which of course a lot of conferences don't make room for. But I think more are, and I think particularly thinking of the links between the visual and arts-based research and arts-based representation, that representation through the visual is absolutely critical as a mode. But it's, again, you can represent the visual other ways, but think about visual as modes of inquiry, modes of dissemination, modes of conduct in some way.